Okay, so in this lesson, I'm hoping to make it kind of quick. We're talking about rounding and using a calculator. Now, I already had to obviously use a calculator and round in the previous lessons, but I kind of just wanted to talk about it here just to clarify a couple things, as well as get used to Desmos if you are not super familiar with it, because we're going to have some complicated things we're going to be working with in the future to put into the calculator, and you can do everything right in the question, and then if you plug it in wrong, you're going to get the answer wrong. So you have to be very careful with this. So it's about rounding. So in this class, we are going to be rounding the nearest hundredth, because this is finance, and almost everything we work with, not all the time, but almost everything we work with is money. And so we need 2 decimal places because that's money, right? Pennies and cents are 2 decimal places, right? 55 cents, 0.55, yeah? So we got to go over this. Now, again, the way Canvas works, which is kind of nice, is I work in a margin of error, they call it. So if you round a little bit off, it should still mark you correct, hopefully. However, there are some times where it marks you incorrect because you rounded incorrectly. And I will give you the point for it, but I have to go back and change that. And sometimes I forget to. I'm a human, and that's a little very small detail. So especially if you do an assignment late, I might not remember to go back and fix it because you did it so late. So I will always round correctly in class, obviously. I'm not going to round incorrectly as a teacher. So I want to explain how we do round so we can be aware of it and hopefully do it correctly as well. So to the nearest hundredth. So to recall how we do this. Now, if I would round to 2 decimal places, what we have to look at is the 3rd decimal place. So we need to look at the 3rd number. So if the 3rd decimal, I'm going to say, if the 3rd decimal is ... I'm going to write this. If it's 4 or less, that means we round down, meaning we're just basically going to chop off the 3rd decimal. That's his round, not count. Round down. Excuse me for my terrible handwriting. I'm just scribbling with my finger here. If the 3rd decimal is 5 or greater, we round up. So this is like saying 52 cents is going to round down to 50, something like that, yeah? But it's going to work a little bit differently here. So the 3rd decimal, so I have 45.982. This is my 3rd decimal. It tells me what to do with the 2nd one. So I know so far, although I got to be careful with this, that this 9 is going to stay the same for right now, at least. Got to be careful with some of these examples. I'm going to see if I need to round this 8 up or if I need to keep it the same. Round it down, basically, is what that's called. So since this is a 2, this is 4 or less, right? 2 is less than 4. What that means is we are going to round down. So rounding down in this case just means this 2 gets chopped off and it stays as an 8. That's what rounding down means. So we would put this in Canvas as 45.98. There's our answer. Let's look at the next one. So this is 0.465. So my 3rd decimal is 5. That's going to tell me what to do with the 6. So what do you think is going to happen here? This is 5 or greater, so we should round up. So now this 6 is getting rounded up to a 7, right? 0.47. So let's try one more, and then I'm going to have you guys try the rest of them. What's our 3rd digit here? Because we have more than 3 digits right now. Our 3rd decimal, I should say, is going to be 8. That tells me what to do with the 0. So these numbers don't matter back here. I'm only looking at the 8. Now, should I round up or round down here? This is going to be a rounding up because the 3rd decimal is greater than 5, or 5 or greater, I should say. So if I'm going to round up, what would I round the 0 up to? That would go up to 1, right? So this is 1.01. This 8 tells me to round the 0 up to a 1, and therefore that would be my answer. So go ahead and try these bottom 2. You're focusing on the 3rd decimal to round the 2nd. Go ahead and try it. Okay, here our third decimal is 6. That is greater than 5, 5 or greater. So that tells me 94 point. These 6's back here don't matter. I'm going to round this 6 up to 6, 7. That's how we would round that there. Here, though, my third decimal is a 3. And again, these other 3's back here don't matter. Well, 3 is 4 or less. It falls into that category. So that means I'm just going to leave this as 0.33. So hopefully that makes sense. You guys have obviously learned this before in elementary school, but we just want a little bit of a refresher. Like I said, if you round incorrectly, boys, hey, I will still give you the point for it. I may just have to go back and change it myself. Okay, let's talk about Desmos now. So with Desmos, again, this section we're going to go over right now is either Desmos or your own calculator. However, if you have a calculator that has a fraction button, we talked about this, it needs to have a button that when you click it, it creates the numerator and the denominator separately for you to type into. So Desmos does have that. Oh man, I just realized I erased some stuff. That's okay. Desmos this is the fraction button in Desmos. So if you notice, I'll go ahead and show you here. If I click it, there it is. It allows me to type the bottom and the top, the numerator and the denominator. So if you have a calculator, but it does not have that button, use Desmos. Yeah, it's not going to be as easy to use. So going back here. So I had highlighted, if you have the notes, I just realized I accidentally erased them because I had to redo this whole video because it didn't save. I had highlighted some important buttons. So the fraction button is obviously super important. Here's all your basic stuff. And then you have this ANS you might be using occasionally as well. That stands for answer. That's if you have a really big answer, if you're doing a multi-step question and you did one step and then you have an answer and it's really long. What that will do, so obviously this is not that long, but if I had like 2 times 3 and then I hit enter. If I want to use this answer down here, you can obviously just retype it, or you can click answer and it will drop it down for you, and then you can multiply by something else, you can add something else, whatever that is. Obviously, again, 6 is not hard to retype, but if it's a long answer, you might just want to do that instead of having to retype it. Okay. And then over here, we have our parentheses, which are super important. We're going to have lots of problems with parentheses. And then we have our exponent button. 1 second. Major, I love you. Come on, come on. I know I thought I was going to, but I have to record this video. He has a very loud ball that he's chewing on. It sounds really gross. So I'm sorry if you heard that in the background there. So again, this is our exponent button here. If this is just for, obviously, if it's just a square, power of 2, but we're mostly going to be working with things that are not powers of 2. One last thing I want to say here about Desmos, they have a fraction button. A percent button. Do not use this. It only works in very specific situations, and we have more complicated situations than that. So don't use that percent button. I taught you how to work with percents. You see a percent and you go, I promised Miss Holberg I must divide it by 100 and get it as a decimal and then multiply with it. Yeah, so don't use that button. Okay, so all we're gonna do here, we're gonna kind of go back and forth. You might, if you don't have the notes packet, you'll probably wanna copy these down, because switching back between the video and Desmos messes with your equation in Desmos. If you half type an equation in and then click away from Desmos, it can mess with it. So you gotta be a little bit careful with that. Okay, let's go ahead and try this first one. So open up Desmos. Remember, if you haven't already done so, remember there is a link in Canvas in the very top section. It's near the bottom, I believe. If you don't know how to get to Desmos otherwise, all we're gonna do is I'm gonna have you try plugging this in, and then let's check and see if we got the right answer. Make sure you're rounding to 2 decimal places. Okay, so I have parentheses, 2 plus 2.1. So let me clear this out. Oops, clear all. I have parentheses. The very first button you should hit is parentheses. So you cannot drop them. You don't just get to be like, that's not important. If it says parentheses typed, you have to enter it as well. So 2 plus 2.1, close parentheses. Something about Desmos you have to be very careful about, guys, is that it will show you the answer as you type things that would give an answer. So be very careful not to write your answer down or look at the answer until you're done plugging it in. Because I have an exponent, so I need to hit the exponent button to the fourth, and here's my answer. 282.5761. Let's go over here. So if you did not get this, I want you to pause the video, go back and try it again in Desmos. 282.5761. And then let's round this to the nearest hundredth. Using what we just learned, what should I round this to? Well, the third decimal is a 6. That tells me to round the 7 up to an 8. So we should get 282.58. If you did not get that, go back to Desmos, try and plug it in again. Let's try this next one though. So this next one, notice these next two actually are very large fractions. We've got a whomping top of the fraction, we got a whomping bottom of the fraction. In this one, or when you have a big fraction like this, the very first button you should hit is the fraction button. So fraction button, and then you can enter the top, and you can enter the bottom, and then you can get your answer. Notice that we are going to have a fraction within a fraction here. It's going to happen very often. So like I said, I want you to try it first, and then I will show you how to plug it in. We can see if we're getting the same answer. Okay, so plugging this in, let me go ahead and clear this out. It's a big whopping fraction. Boom, I hit the fraction button. On top, I have 4 plus 3 minus 5. Now notice when I clicked away from Desmos, now my cursor is on the side. This is what I was saying about being very careful about clicking away from Desmos. It moves where your cursor is at. So I'm going to click back up to the top. I have 4 plus 3 minus 5. There's the top. Now I'm going to click on the bottom. So I'm going to have to click back there again because I need to see it. So I have 7 plus 5 and 2/5. So I'm going to use the fraction button again. So I have 7 plus, how this goes is 5, fraction button, and then I can enter the 2/5. So you should have gotten 0.161 and lots of other numbers. Oops. 0.161, which this should round to 0.16. Again, this one tells me to keep the 6 the same. So once more, if you did not get 0.161, go back and try it again in Desmos. You can rewatch the section where I showed how to if you were still getting lost. Okay, this last one though is pretty tricky. Little tip here for Desmos. We are going to have formulas where we have an exponent where you have to do stuff in it. So this is 3 times 5 in the exponent. What I'm going to recommend you do is do the exponent ahead of time and then plug in what it actually is. Because again, it's kind of weird in Desmos. There's a way around it, but I'd rather just teach you this way. If we were in school and we had the nice calculators, I wouldn't have to deal with it. But whatever, we have Desmos. So 3 times 5 gives me 15. So rather than plug in 3 times 5 as the exponent, plug in 15. Otherwise, again, there's some issues. Now, a couple other things before I let you go try this. Again, this is a big fraction, a big whomping fraction. The very first button you hit is fraction button. That's the A over B. The next thing is, again, as a tip, your calculator needs to look the exact same as what you see on your paper here. Notice there's 2 parentheses here, and then these go back to back. That's not a typo. It needs to look exactly like that with that exponent on the outside. So you may want to copy this down if you don't have the notes packet before you look at Desmos, rather than having to flip back and forth. Go ahead and try and plug that in. Let's see if you can get the same answer. Okay, so let's try this. I have parentheses 2 plus 3/4 to the 15th minus 1. Let's clear this out. I have a fraction. You should have hit that first. Parentheses 2 plus fraction again. fourths, close parentheses, to the 15th minus 1. Now notice that this looks exactly like the paper. Yeah, this minus 1 is not in the exponent. If you are using your own calculator, it's possible the minus 1 is in the exponent. So just be careful. The minus 1 is bumped back down. Now on the bottom, I have two parentheses, so I'm going to click parenthesis, parenthesis. I have 1 minus 5.2 close parenthesis. So on the bottom, I have parenthesis, parenthesis. 1 minus 5.2 close parenthesis. And then I have another parenthesis, 4 plus 2. Another parenthesis, 4 plus 2, double parentheses. Once again, that's what's typed. And then I have my exponent to the, careful, exponent to the third. Okay, so this is where you may need to go back and double check. You should get negative 243.102, which, what would we round this to? Well, that 2 tells me to keep the 0 the same, so negative 243.10. So please go back to Desmos, try it again. I'll even show my Desmos screen here. It needs to look like that. You might need to go back and fix a couple things. If you are having trouble, guys, as well, you can take a picture on your phone and send it to me over Remind, and then I can point out, yes, this is what went wrong. So go ahead and try it again if you need to. Otherwise, after this, your homework is more the same. Just really practicing with Desmos, making sure we can use it correctly and get the right answers.